Welcome to the Fangled Cast, brought to you by Fangled Technologies, where we help you convert every person your company touches into a voracious advocate for your brand. So I have with me today one of my oldest friends from college and also a fraternity brother of mine who happens to be one of America's premier photographers. He's the owner of Joyce Photography and also Optic Lizard Video Productions. So Todd, tell me just a little bit about yourself and what your two organizations, your two companies do.
Well, I was a still photographer for 20 years and incorporated video and have two business partners to do that. And really what that allows us to do is do a cohesive campaign. We do advertising work, do a lot of healthcare, but I predominantly photograph people in, I'll say, concepts or environments in the advertising world. And as I say, we produce a lot of video work. And the video and the stills, as I say, work wonderfully cohesively so that your campaign's identical in both stills and video.
Interesting. My biggest question to any true photographer is, what's the difference between being a photographer and being a guy with a camera in this digital age where everybody who's got an iPhone or an Android thinks they're a photographer?
To me, being a professional is one of the most important things. And that's predominantly, when I say being a professional, it's having a business license, it's having workers' compensation, having business insurance, knowing legal liabilities, and having, as an example, a talent release or a property release, which is all about protecting the client who's hiring me. I've got all those things in place so that if there is an injury, I have workers' comp. If let's say we photograph one of your employees and then it's a great photo, and you want to use it for a long period of time, and that person leaves for some reason, because they've signed a release and we've got permission, you can still use that without fear of retribution or any issues from them.
I've used your services many times over the years and I mean, really turned campaigns from being decent campaigns into a wow. But what is it about a guy like or a company like Joyce Photography that's different than, like, for example, hiring someone who does wedding photography to now do commercial work?
Sure. Let's say you hired a wedding photographer to shoot your product. They may have a really great shot of the bouquet or the rings or something like that, but they're not well versed necessarily in the experience of, I'll say, certain reflective surfaces, things like that 30 years of experience brings to the ability to light something well. That's another issue too, is being a professional, it's having the right equipment. I get into scenarios where you can't rely on the available light. So you have to artificially light things. And an awful lot of the percentage of time, I'll do something, whether it's subtractive or additive or just a highlight somewhere to make something really exciting and really spring off the page beautifully, as opposed to just recording it. I hate to use the wedding photographer, but I'll use a journalist. Journalists they're not supposed to enhance things. A journalist is supposed to record something as it was. So using available light and recording the actual story of it is important in their realm, but we may need to interest it up, make it exciting. And so, I'm trying to tell your story the way you want it to be told, not maybe as a factory can be dirty. We're going to make it look a little cleaner, a little bit more professional, if that's the case. And
I remember a project that we worked on together, which was a company that manufactured steel drums. Mm-hmm. And it's a factory that's been in the same location since almost the turn of the century.
Right.
And I recall when the photography was done, some of the work actually ended up being portrait work of the facility that was in the lobby, and guests would come in and say, God, somebody made this factory look sexy or otherwise. What do you think it is that in your training or all of the years of experience that allows you to photograph things or video things that normally would be mundane to actually make them interesting and sexy.
And there's angle, there's lens choice, there's perspective. All those things really matter, but lighting is what really makes something sing. It makes it sexy, it makes it exciting. To have a highlight on something in the right place, and in video too. It's like you travel across a surface and that highlight like runs across it. It's more exciting than just recording something. Yeah. And light and dark, you can hide an awful lot of things in shadow. If you light it correctly or well, that if you've got available light, it obviously shows. So you can really give people, I don't want to sound misleading. We just make it look the best you can make it.
Absolutely. Highlighting the part that we're looking for. A lot of that, we'll talk a little bit later about, engagement with clients and how you gather your information from the client to understand what it is that they're actually looking for.
Sure.
First, I'm curious, if I'm a marketing professional and I'm project managing a large scale, whether it's digital, print, or otherwise, how do I go about finding, and what are the questions that I should ask when I interview potential photographers to really get a feel for their understanding and their capabilities?
Certainly the level of experience. Have you ever done this before? There are, have you ever been in a factory? And that's another thing about being a professional. Imagine somebody comes in and doesn't secure their lights well and drops a light stand into your process and shuts your line down. That's somebody who's been there before that could be saving you $1 million in production costs because they didn't cause something to go bad. But to ask the right questions, it's, have you done this before? Have you ever been in this area? Do you have experience? And that's assuming manufacturing based on kind of our past conversation. But you really have to ask specific questions for what you're looking to do. Mm-hmm. If you are hiring a wedding photographer, you have very different pictures or different questions than if you're hiring an industrial photographer or a portrait photographer, or, ask those specific questions that are specific to your needs.
So if I'm checking, if I'm checking references, for example, on past work that a photographer's done, I've looked at the portfolio. I'm interested. I think the pictures might represent the kind of work that I want. You feel like going after those references of those clients to see how they actually interact with and work within the facility is probably a powerful way of really filtering out the good from the bad, those that do and don't.
Sure. And, we've got tools now with LinkedIn and reviews and things like that. There's not a bad review of our company out there. Knock on wood. We really go the extra mile to make sure that everybody's happy. But you've got like on the video website, we've got actual client recommendations. Mm-hmm. Things that they've said about working with us. Depending on the project and your involvement as a client, you may be very interested in being there 100%, or you may want to turn the person loose and discover and shoot things without you there. And that's very important, because the level of communication that I get if somebody wants to turn me loose, it's, what are you looking to do? What are you looking to say in this? And when somebody hires me, that's the one of the most important questions that I ask is, what are you trying to communicate? Not what do you want me to photograph? It's, what do you want to say when somebody looks at these images? What do you want them to walk away with an understanding? And then I seek to communicate that. It's, if you want me to photograph your part, you've got a specific need, but do you want that part to be quality? Do you want it to be high end, or do you want it to be traditional, like old school craftsmanship? Very different looks. And, if it's what you want to communicate, that's the important part.
And that's really leading into what my next question was going to be, was about that engagement with the client. Have you found where you've gotten to the point where in talking with the client, they simply don't know what they need and you've had to guide that? And
Sure.
what are the questions that, if you can just a couple of examples of, if I've hired you and I know that your time is money and I'm going to be spending properly for excellent work, but what can I as a client and what interaction would you have with the client to best get to what it is that you're going to do before you begin to set up and execute that?
Sure. I over the years, I've worked with all levels of people who are very, very new to something, or they may not completely understand exactly what their needs are. And sometimes you can walk them through and help them. That's a level of professional experience that has value. If you come to me, I'm not going to dictate what I have to do. I'm going to work with you to understand your needs and try to get you what you need, whether you understand that or not. Some clients come to me and they know exactly what they want. And a great example is I did a whole series of work for a hospital network. And the client knew exactly what they wanted, and they communicated it so well to me that, and a lot of this was lifestyle with people. So we would build a scene and then we'd photograph it or photograph the people individually. And I'd stop every once in a while to ask the client what was their perspective on what I was shooting. And her reaction, and it's because she did such a good job communicating what they were looking for and their needs. She's like, "You're doing exactly what I want. Just keep doing it. Don't stop. Keep going."
Yep.
And it was because of that level of communication that we had up front that was such an advantage, because I knew what she wanted. I mean, I knew what their needs were. I knew what they were trying to communicate. And she trusted me so much too, that she's like, "Just keep going. Keep doing what you're doing." And other clients, they want to see every image. And I shoot tethered to the computer when I do stills. And so if a client wants to be heavily involved and right over my shoulder, we can debate every image I shoot right on the computer.
It's expensive to do that, though, doesn't it, when you're selling your hour?
Well, no, it's yes and no. It's what's the value of the importance of getting it perfect, what you want. And if you're the client and you know exactly what you want and you want to be involved in that, and you may say, "You know what, you're showing," let's say it's a part, because that's so easy to understand. "You're showing this part from this angle. It needs to show a certain area that's really hard to manufacture. And we've got to get a highlight off that little bit of internal flange that our competitors can't do. They can't do it well, but ours is so well done." Having that highlighted is so important. So having that engagement is more valuable than just letting me shoot and produce.
In my experience working with other marketing professionals, some have a real stress that the copywriting has to be pristine, or the graphic designer, when you hire a graphic designer, and so many times the photography is sort of the last thought. And to me, when I pick up a piece or I go to a page, the first thing that I'm drawn to is that image, the photo that's created. And then it carries me over. And if the image isn't within the branding, that the company is striving for, many times it causes a bounce on the website. It causes someone to not read on it otherwise. So that engagement just seems so important to me, to truly understand and communicate clearly with the photographer. What is the branding of the company? What is the image? What is the style? All of those things are so important. If you had situations where they weren't able to communicate that to you, and then at the end of the shoot, they looked at it and went, "This doesn't fit"?
It's rare because if I don't understand something, I'm going to ask a question. And if I'm finding that my task isn't clear, and I'm showing images to the client, it's there's got to be a point where I get buy off before we're done. Where it's is this okay? Is this what you want? Is it And we've had to do some retouching after the fact because something, let's say something was proprietary in a shot, we need to get rid of it. That's a pretty simple example. Mm-hmm. I suppose that happened a long time ago. It doesn't happen so much.
Yeah. One of the things, a lot of the people who are listening to this podcast are very, very strong LinkedIn networking people.
Right.
I'm always sort of surprised when I look at people's headshots and portraits. And by the way, anyone who looks at my profile, that's actually Todd's work, making this ugly mug look good for my professional profile. And recently, I've seen some of the people I network with who've spent the money to really get a good photographer, mm-hmm. and it changes quite a bit the image when you're helping someone. And I know you've done, for lack of sounding like I'm fawning, but some beautiful portrait work over the years that I've seen. Anyone who gets a chance to go to Todd's later on in the comments, you'll be able to see his website so you can look at a lot of the work that he's done. When someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I want a headshot," what's that process like?
Excuse me, my dog came on. Well, first of all, you want to be engaging. You want to be likable, and connection in the eyes. There's got to be a sparkle. Lighting direction is important. If somebody is wide-faced, you want to light them a certain way. If somebody's narrow-faced, you want to light them differently. And getting that sparkle, you can see the reflection of my glasses. Getting like a highlight in the eyes is a very engaging thing, so that's what I go for, and it's likability. I'll also tell a quick story that I photographed a group of lawyers, and one of the lawyers would not smile, would not engage, and I said, don't you want your clients to see you and say, like, I trust this person and I want to hire them because they'll go to bat for me, they'll advocate for me. And he says, well, that's if you're innocent. And I said, what do you mean? I'm too naive here. And he says, well, if you're innocent, you want somebody who you're going to connect with. If you're guilty, you want somebody to be a bulldog and go, after the person or defend you in a certain way. And I was like, well, I'm too naive in this world. I thought everybody was innocent who would come and want to be protected. But mm-hmm. Anyway, so it's important that you get a beautiful, engaging kind of a look, and the lighting is complementary for your face, your situation, your environment.
Yeah, I noticed on mine, and you've explained it to me, but I'm hoping that you can explain it to others. In my headshot, there's a cut right here so that the top of my head is slightly out of frame. Mm-hmm. What's the philosophy behind doing that?
So there have been studies of tracing the eye, and the eye goes to the first circle it sees. So and I'll drop my screen here because I've been cropping my head. First of all, it's not that attractive from the eyebrows up. But if I'm pulled back, I become more of I'll say a third person, where if you crop into that circle, the next circle that you can go to are the eyes. So it makes the viewer engage with the eyes, which connects the person in the viewing and gives you more of a second person as opposed to third person, kind of a viewpoint.
Interesting. I know that you were the national president for the American Society of Media Photographers. If I'm a marketing executive and I'm looking to finally hire a really good photographer who's going to help me with future projects and otherwise, where would I go to find somebody who I could really trust and learn from, just to start building that prospect list?
Sure. So all over the country, the American Society of Media Photographers is a trade association of, I believe, over 7,000 members. At least it used to be when I was president. The level of professionalism that the organization promotes is things like, having a business license, workers' comp, doing the right releases. And in this time of COVID, I have a release that essentially says, here's what you can expect of me in this environment, and here's what I need to expect from you and the people around me. that's an agreement with anybody who, and we take temperatures, things like that. That's taking things seriously to protect the client and me. And the organization is all about those things. So you're going to hire somebody who, at least the trade association, gives them those tools to protect you. Mm-hmm. So number one, it's a good idea to go to the trade association membership. But you can find photographers. There's something called findaphotographer.org, O-R-G, that is essentially members in your area. Let's say you live in Sacramento, California, and you're looking for members out there. You can do a radius search for photographers and actually see samples of their work and then link directly to their website. So it's just a really great resource versus Google. There's nothing like getting 15,000 results. How many are you looking for? One or two, that fit your needs. You don't need 15,000. So this really refines the search to be more professional people.
Great. And is there anything else I haven't asked you about photographers that you think would be important to share with the audience?
Yeah, actually, what's interesting about photography is that photography and video people is that you're not buying a product. What you're doing when you when you're looking for somebody is you're buying the confidence in them that they can provide what you need, because the product hasn't been manufactured or made yet. So you have to feel confident in that person's abilities as a good communicator. Let's say you're a little hazy on exactly what you need and you want somebody to collaborate in that sense. You need to find somebody who you're going to feel comfortable talking to, and that has good experience, because that thing that they're yet to create, you've got to make sure that they're on the same page, their style is appropriate, and their level of experience of maybe having done what you need to do. It's not their first rodeo. That they're this big project. If you've got a big project and a $50,000 budget, you need to make sure you're hiring the right person who has been there before. It's not their, it's just, they've done big projects. They've hired talent. They've hired, production assistants. They're able to retouch and make things, interesting and have the right amount of staff there and light it well and all those great things, because you have to be confident that they're going to come through for you. Because there's money on the line and your company.
It's really important. Using professional photography is never cheap, but nothing good ever is. If you invest in proper photography, what's the expression that is only a fool thinks that spending $1,000 to make $1 million is a bad idea. It really comes down to, at the end of the day, do you want your marketing imagery to pop, to sizzle, to really align with what your goals, what your branding, or do you want a guy with an iPhone to take some pictures that just sort of illustrate what's there? Right.
If you're just beginning your company, you can't afford me. But at some point there may be, and I'm not saying I'm the right person for the job, because what you do, there may be somebody who's better at what you're needing than I am. And you need to go out and find that right person for you. And you're right, they're not always cheap. If you pay for what you get, make sure that you're getting what you want, and then be willing to pay for it.
Absolutely. So Todd, as we wrap this up, and of course I'll be putting the links to your websites so that people will be able to find you. But how else can people engage and get to know your work a little bit better, and maybe even get more advice on finding the right photographer for their need?
It's funny, I dialogue with people all the time, clients and other photographers. Having been the president of ASMP, I know an awful lot of people, and people reach out to me all the time. They reach out to me for pricing. They reach out to me for advice on all kinds of things. So if you're a manufacturer, and let's say you're in Sacramento and you're looking for somebody, and you're just, let's say, because you trust Andrew, therefore the the transverse property of equality, you trust me. Reach out to me. Feel free to just ask for advice, whatever, in pricing, in finding the right person and the right approach, whatever. Happy to talk to you. On another line of thought, you go ahead, Andrew.
No. Please continue.
Well, I was just going to say, you can find on the asmp.org site, there's Find a Photographer, but it's also directly linked as findaphotographer.org. The other resources, it really depends on what you're looking for. I mean, in my commercial world, that's probably the best place to go.
Great. I gotta say, Ted, I really appreciate your generosity of time coming on today and talking with us.
So happy to do it.
Pleasure. We've been. I was thinking about it. I think we've known each other 35 years now.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's always great. And for people who don't, I mean, normally a conversation between me and Todd lasts a lot longer than this podcast is. I find Todd just to be one of the most interesting people in my world, as well as a great resource for just photography, for imagery, and otherwise. And I just wanted to say thank you again for coming on today.
Oh, you're welcome. Very kind of you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
May I make a quick comment about my video company?
Oh, please do. Please do.
So the video company, opticlizard.com, is where you can go. Optic Lizard is a company where I've had two other still photographers who do wonderful work. And as an example, if you want to photograph people in industrial or lifestyle, things like that, that's me. If you want architecture work, that's one of my partners, Joe. And if you want studio work, especially high concepts that are just crazy sets, things like that, that's my other partner, Tony. And you can find him on Optic Lizard, all three of us on opticlizard.com. But the video work that we do, we've partnered, we're competitors in stills, but we've partnered because you cannot do video alone. And if you ever hire a still photographer and say, can you shoot some video too? And they're like, sure, I'll bring my video gear too. You just can't do it alone. No. Video is a bigger animal. And what we produce is really engaging, heartfelt, authentic stories for companies to tell their brand story with heart. We really connect with the viewer. And if you've got an authentic, interesting story that you really need told in a unique way, take a look at opticlizard.com.
Yeah, there was on YouTube, you have a page for that also, correct?
It's, I think, Vimeo.
Oh, Vimeo.
I think we have a reel possibly on YouTube, but
yeah.
We'll go to the website and just take a look at the reel, and you can fish around and look at any sample that might best fit what you want to do that may tell our story.
I remember the first time I saw your I guess what do you call it, a sample reel, sizzle reel? Yeah. I was just blown away. It's incredible. Far and above what most people who say, like I said before, people with an iPhone that say they're a photographer, same guy who says he's a video producer. There's a big difference between a quick demo video that someone might do to show something on their equipment to an actual video production that really makes your company pop and
absolutely
and draws people in to become an advocate for your brand, which is what Untitled Tech is all about. Every client that we work with, it's always about how do you convert every person that your company touches into an advocate for your brand, and that's where success comes from.
It's getting your message out as marketers is so hard, and as you pointed out, when you open, let's say, a publication, one of the first things that gets your attention is the visual, whether that's a great graphic or a photograph. Mm-hmm. And then you go to the headline, and then you go to the copy. And design is so incredibly important. It's a very unique style. So is the imagery. And then the copy. The way the copy is written is a very unique style. And if those three things if you're missing something in those three things, your story's not getting told, and you're just wasting your money.
Yep. In future versions or editions of this podcast, we're going to be talking to some of the best graphic layout people in the industry, as well as how to find a real copywriter as opposed to a guy who just writes stuff.
Right.
It's all critical, and the path begins with the image, and carries through to, like you said, the headline and the text. It's very important. But we're running out of time, but I just wanted to, again, thank you so much for your time today. And I'm so glad to have you as a friend and someone in my network as well, and look forward to working with you again on the next project. I need a brilliant photographer.
Oh, well, you're welcome and thank you. Very kind of you, and our friendship over the years is fantastic in my life too. So thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye now.
All right, take care.
Brought to you by Fangled Technologies, where we help you convert every person your company touches into a voracious advocate for your brand.